Our first speaker is Ancilleno Davis. He's in the Department of Biology. His major advisor is Hayes Cummins, and he's going to talk about go birding before somebody dies.
Birds. Beaks, feathers, wings, and song in the springtime. We see birds in religion, hieroglyphics, and ancient tapestries. And it's not just because they're beautiful hummingbirds or edible chickens, but birds connect us to nature. Who likes mangoes? Parrots like mangoes. But data shows that native habitat and fruits nearby plantations distract the birds, leaving bigger, juicier mangoes for sale and exportation. Who needs their coffee to get going? All right, that's better. Birds eat bean-boring beetles and protect his coffee and keep it flowing. Who's had breakbone fever? It's just what you think. Every bone in your body feels like it's broken and it stinks. And in this room, it's just me. But in other places, it's an epidemic disease that's carried by mosquitoes, so they use DDT, but that can't kill mosquitoes that hide in the trees, but birds can. And birds living on islands can poop in the sea, which feeds coral reefs so the fishes can eat. And I like seafood, but for some people, that's all the protein they eat. Bird data is important, and it's easy to obtain. The lady in the image has just been trained, but she can collect bird data as well as anyone can. She, local birders, and scientists use eBird online, and we can see all of their data uploaded real time. It's free to download and use any data that's there, and we can see which bird did what, when, who saw it, and where. Scientists analyze this data, but it takes them years. The stakeholders have to wait for their publications. So my research is different. I'm using a software called R, and I'm writing my own code, which isn't easy by far, but it's free like eBird, and at the end of the day, the stakeholders get power in an important way. They can use the program I made, and they get an instant report on common species and rare, and how they change over time. And this allows them to protect people from these diseases. This allows them to save the mangoes and the fishes. This gives them the chance to not just go birding, but they get to go birding and get their data analyzed before somebody dies. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jessica Gunzburger in Student Affairs and Higher Education, and her advisor is Alyssa Avis, and she's going to talk to us about the role of race in student affairs supervision.
Take a moment and think about your supervisor and the impact they have on you. Do they inspire you to work harder, to try new things? Or maybe you avoid them. Perhaps they're the most stressful part of your job. Research shows that your direct supervisor has one of the most significant effects on your day-to-day work life. They can make or break the work experience. Good supervision leads to increased employee retention, satisfaction, and productivity. When individuals are getting good supervision, they're at their best, which means that their organizations benefit as well. Now, there are all kinds of factors that influence whether a supervision relationship is a good one. And I put several of them up here on the slide that are frequently cited in the literature. But as you look at this list, you may notice that there's something missing. Who we are. Our identity, things like our race, gender, or ability, our identity also influences the supervision relationship. But the research never talks about it. So that's where I come in. The purpose of my dissertation is to understand the role that race in particular plays in supervision relationships. Now, this is important because racism continues to pervade all aspects of our society. There's all kinds of evidence to show that students, faculty, and staff of color in higher education regularly experience racism at our colleges and universities. There's every reason to believe it affects the supervision relationship as well, but the literature doesn't talk about it. So to understand this concept, I'm zeroing in on supervision in my field, student affairs. In this qualitative study, I use a narrative methodology, focusing on the stories of participants through over 30 in-depth interviews. Participants in this study are professionals of color who are supervised by white people. And it's important that I interview the professionals of color and not their white supervisors, because research shows that white people, because of our racial privilege, we often don't see how race shows up in our interpersonal interactions. So I'm interviewing these professionals of color, and I'm asking them questions like, how do you see race affecting your supervision relationships? How do you handle it when a white supervisor does something that's racist? Or what have your really effective white supervisors done well that we can learn from? Findings from this study will enable me to paint a rich, complex picture of the many ways that race affects the supervision process. And this not only means that we're going to learn more about this concept that we don't talk about, but we are going to have tangible ways to make supervision more inclusive and socially just, so we can create environments where every person in higher education has the opportunity to be at their best. Thank you.
Our number 3 finalist is MD Salah Uddin in the Department of Physics, and his major advisor is Herbert Yeager. And the title of his talk is Testing Matter with Antimatter.
Metals and alloys are considered as the backbone of human civilization. We built a structure like this, Gunzburger Downs Earth Station, the largest circular station on Earth. Mega structure like this, Burj Khalifa, the tallest structure in the world. Suspension bridge like this, John A. Robbins Suspension Bridge in Cincinnati, which was the longest suspension bridge in the world in 1866. To build this kind of structures, we use thousands and thousands of tons of metals and steels. These materials require high longevity, high tensile strength, and a strong resistance to corrosion. And these are extremely crucial for earthquake active zones. The death toll has taken by major earthquakes is very big. In 2010, the earthquake in Haiti had approximate death toll of more than 160,000, and over 30,000 commercial buildings collapsed. Different kinds of material defects are extremely harmful for the lasting and usefulness of the materials. Therefore, proper detection and understanding of these defects is highly necessary. So my thesis is to study these defects on different materials in different conditions. For this work, we use a technique called positron annihilation lifetime spectroscopy, shortly called PAS technique. This technique is not invasive to materials, and it is extremely sensitive. We use antimatter called positrons from a radioactive sodium nucleus, which simultaneously emits high-energy gamma rays and positrons. This positron enters the matter, interacts with defects, and emits characteristic gamma rays, which carry necessary information about defects, like its concentration, size, and so on. We are investigating the defects long before they are visible, because the size of the defects are on the order of size of atoms. We are not only investigating the defects of the materials which are going to be used in future megastructures, but also on those structures that are already built. Suppose, if I want to study the defects of the metals used in John A. Robbins suspension bridge, we need to put a PLS device on the metals, and after taking data and assay analysis, we could figure out the defects in that material, and also we might be able to predict the longevity of the metals in that bridge. As my master's thesis, I am working on this technique and have chosen to characterize some metals and alloys which are highly necessary for material scientists and engineers to build efficient and superstructures in future. Thank you.
She's in the Department of Kinesiology and Health, and her advisors are Robin Veely and Rosemary Ward. And she's going to talk to us about the effects of imagery on strength training performance. Morgan.
Strength training is more than just lifting weights for those who participate in athletics. Rather, it's for anyone who's interested in living a long and healthy life. Did you know that only 27% of people strength train regularly in the United States? And those that participate in strength training routines experience increased strength, fat-free mass, decreased body fat, and improved performance in sporting activity and daily life activities. The purpose of my thesis is to examine the effects of imagery training on strength training performance and those who have strength training experience. But first, what is imagery? Imagery is the process of imagining a performance with no related overt actions. Imagery is all done in your head. Research has shown that imagery can improve performance. An example is Lindsey Vonn, one of the top American skiers. She used imagery as part of her routine prior to the 2010 Olympics, and as a result, claimed the Olympic gold in the 2010 Olympic downhill. But my thesis is going to focus on PETLIP imagery, which stands for Physical, Environmental, Task, Timing, Learning, Emotion, and Perspective. It includes all the senses and emotions you would experience if you were actually performing, and it's done in the environment in which you would perform the skill. An example would be someone lying on the bench in a gym, pressing the bar to their chest and back up, but instead of pressing it, they're imagining it. And it has been done with novice participants, and an example of this was a study done with novice participants on a bicep curl machine, and the participants had no prior strength training experience. And researchers looking to see if PETLIP imagery can improve bicep curl performance in those with no experience. And the researchers concluded that those who use PETLIP imagery, physical practice, and a combination of the two increase their bicep curl performance. But we don't know the impact it has on those with strength training experience performing a more complex exercise. The purpose of my thesis is to determine if strength gains can be made in those with strength training experience. We know that strength training has a lasting impact on health and longevity, yet so few people do it. But it's a crucial part of elite professional athletes' routine. How do we think Larry Bird won 3 NBA titles, or how Michael Phelps won 22 Olympic medals? If people start seeing progress in strength improvements, they might stick with the routine because they're seeing progress and improvement. And athletes might have improved performance and a slight edge over their competitors. So in conclusion, my thesis is looking to determine if PETLIP imagery can have an effect on those with strength training experience on the barbell bench press. Thank you.
Okay, number 5 is Shaobing Li. He's in the Department of Educational Leadership, and his advisor is Kathleen Knight-Abowitz. He'll be speaking today about mentoring in the higher education environment from a multicultural perspective.
Mentoring values personal caring, high-quality connection, and transformative growth. Mentoring is very important in today's diverse and heterogeneous learning environment. Yet external research pays less attention to mentoring from a multicultural perspective. My research question is, what does mentoring mean in multicultural learning environment? This is a conceptual research paper. I will use a metaphor, one candle, then lights another to explore the meaning of mentoring. One candle represents a mentor, the other candle refers to a mentee. I will explore mentoring in terms of 3 aspects: a mentor, a mentee, and the relational process that connects both of them. The mentor and the candle, firstly, need to be caught on fire in order to light up the other candle. Caught on fire means a mentor, firstly, should have to be a human person, to have one heart, to care and trust your privilege. Language communication is critical for multicultural learning. There's a tension between language of caring and the language of professionalism. For instance, someone may introduce himself, "I'm a professor, blah, blah." He may think, "Okay, I know you're a professor, but how you show me your professionalism? That's really important." If there's no humane, caring, and mutual trust relationship, how can you inspire the other human person? The mentee at the other candle must perceive a safe and encouraging learning environment. Cultural climate really matters. Just imagine, if you are in a stormy situation, how can you light up the other candle? Similarly, a mentee benefits from an inclusive learning environment. A distinct feature of monocultural learning is heterogeneity. Both mentor and mentee are in the same big academic family. In this big family, some students may learn better than the other. The very important thing for mentor is to make sure each person can get the equal opportunity, including those who are learning slowly. Otherwise, if those slow learners cannot be given equal opportunity to experience their own success or failures, they will never grow up. Mentoring as a relational process is epitomized all kinds of co-working, co-teaching, co-presentation, collaborative research are very beneficial to culturally relevant learning. Collaborative relationship means both parties need to learn from each other and complement each other. All of this co-work and joint research shows the importance of role modeling in connection. That's my experiential learning of mentoring. Mentoring means to be a human person, to care, to trust, to facilitate, and to empower. Thank you.
Our sixth finalist is Patrick Garrett in the Department of Biology, and his major advisor is Paul Schaefer, and he's going to talk to us about pollination in a human-dominated world. Patrick.
Okay, so how many of you have sat down for a meal with your family, or went out to get a bite to eat with your friends, or even actually just went to the grocery store to shop for food? Now, by show of hands, how many of you have actually thought where all that food comes from? Come on, don't be shy. Well, that's really good. Either indirectly or directly, all that food comes from plants. I'm a botanist, so I study plants. Specifically, I study them in the context of pollination. Pollination is basically the process by which plants have sex to make baby plants. And so, and baby plants are basically what we call seeds. Now these seeds, they grow up and they become the things that we eat and interact with on a daily basis. And so the study of plants is super important to our long-term longevity as a species. So I study pollination in southern Florida in what biologists call a hotspot of biodiversity. Now these are areas that have lots of different types of species, but they're also critically endangered because of how humans interact with their environment. It's pretty bad. We do some pretty dangerous stuff on the planet. So, in particular, I study a plant called cinnamon bark. Now you can use it for everything to spice your chili, or even better, you can use it medicinally to treat everything from fevers to toothaches, even STDs. It's a pretty important plant. And so what I've done in my research, because of its endangered status, its importance as a food resource, and its medicinal qualities, is I've tried to identify what pollinators pollinate this plant to create new baby plants. Right? Okay, so we found something really, really cool in our research. All the pollinators of this plant, the really important ones at least, are in fact endangered and threatened themselves. This makes sense, right? So we get plants that, we get no pollinators, we don't get baby plants, we don't get food for the future. So one particular example is the Atala butterfly. You can see it on the left there, hanging on the screen. Thought to be extinct for the last 30 years in the United States. We've recently found a couple species, and so it actually pollinates this plant. So next time you sit down with your family and you're eating your meal, or you go out to Wendy's and get a bite with your friends, or you're at the grocery store shopping for some bell peppers for a salad or something, think about how important plants are for your future. And most importantly, think about how fundamental pollination is in that process. Thank you.
All right, finalist number 7 is Tanya Willard. Education, and Kathy Goodman is her advisor. And she'll be speaking to us today about understanding Chinese international student experiences in American higher education. Tanya.
Thank you. I know how hard this is for you. This is the only thing I can think to say to the Chinese international student currently sitting in my cubicle. The tears begin to fall, and I am completely caught off guard by this sudden display of emotion by Zion. A student in my class, Zion never smiles or laughs or shows any kind of emotion, really. His crying makes me want to cry, as I can see and hear and feel how hard it is for Zion and other Chinese students like him to simply exist on this campus. There are nearly 1 million international students studying in the United States, 30% of whom are from China. In the past year, the United States has seen a 10% increase in its international student enrollment, a trend that is likely to continue. My research seeks to understand the experiences of Chinese international students in American college classrooms. I focus on 2 research questions. First, how do Chinese international students experience systems of oppression like racism in college? And 2, how do they overcome that oppression? To answer these questions, I use a qualitative methodology, whose methods include 30 interviews with Chinese international students, campus observations, and an exploration of social media sites, particularly Yik Yak, which allows students to post anonymously and without fear of getting in trouble for what they say. Much of the literature about international students says that their academic and social challenges are due to cultural differences, placing the blame on their home culture and ignoring the impact of university contexts. For example, Chinese students don't ask questions in class because of their collectivist upbringing. Universities play a direct role in student experiences and are full of systems of oppression like racism that silence the voices of students who have different ways of knowing and making meaning. The slide behind me contains actual quotes about international students from Miami students, faculty, staff, alumni, and even parents. This is happening on our campus. So in addition to their classes, Chinese international students must confront an onslaught of racism that impacts their academic performance and their mental and physical health. My second question asks how they overcome that oppression. Most of the literature about them is deficit-based and says they lack the skills they need to be successful in the United States. I, however, use an asset-based approach, which assumes all students have the ability to succeed, and that doesn't ask these students to ignore their Chinese education and socialization. My research centers the experiences of students whose voices are frequently silenced. The goal of my research is to make Chinese international students' lives better by sensitizing faculty to their specific needs and equipping them with tools to make their classrooms more equitable. By doing this for international students like Zion, I believe that colleges and universities can become places where all students thrive. Thank you.
All right. Finalist number 8 is Jonathan Hulse in the Department of Biology, and his advisor is Richard Edelman. The title of his talk is Feeding the World, Studying Plant Health to Sustain Human Health. Jonathan.
There are currently 7.4 billion people on Earth. In the next 42 years, the population is going to double. That means there's going to be 15 billion people that we are going to have to feed. In 1989, the world orders got together and banned methyl bromide. This was the world's most efficient fumigant and fungicide killing pathogens in our soil systems. With this ban of methyl bromide, we are having to find alternatives. Methyl bromide was an ozone depleting gas, 1,000 times more potent than chlorofluorocarbons. We need an atmosphere, so it's excellent that the world orders have banned this ozone depleting gas, but it's an extreme challenge on agricultural scientists like myself. I have proposed using arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, these really cute fungi up in the right-hand corner of my slide. They form a glove-like structure that penetrates into plant roots and turns on defense mechanisms. This fungus also procures phosphorus and moisture from the environment and gives it to the host plant. And in return, the plant gives this nice, beautiful fungus a place to live. The organisms that I also study are giant pumpkins. These pumpkins grow over 2,000 pounds. That's larger than most of your all's vehicles. It creates a lot of food in a very small area. Pumpkins also have anti-cancer, anti-diabetes, and anti-obesity properties. Giant pumpkins also contain carbohydrates, beta-carotene, which is great for your eyesight, and other essential nutrients that we need to survive. With a band of methyl bromide, using arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and giant pumpkins, I think I can grow food for the population. We are going to have 15 billion people on Earth, and we are going to need to feed them. By understanding what genes are being turned on in the host plant, I can design integrated pest management strategies to cope with the diseases that are in specific locations, whether it be here at home in Ohio, or whether it be abroad in less developed nations. I think using arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and giant pumpkins, we can feed the world. We can double the food supply in the next 40 years. If you take a look at the bottom right-hand slide, you will see multiple organisms working together. By understanding the microbial and agricultural communities, we can custom design agricultural fields to grow more food in a smaller area. This is not an Ohio problem. This is not a United States problem. This is a world problem, and I would like to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Okay, finalist number 9 is Shu Qi from the Department of Biology, and his advisor is Claire Shi, and he is going to talk to us about the effect of sympathetic nerve denervation on adipose tissue.
Obesity, a hot topic nowadays. Exercise, diet, or even hormones contribute to the obesity formation. And when I was intern in hospital, I found that patients who are under stress or high sympathetic nerve activity, they show the lean pattern. Their body seems lean. So I think probably the brain also tells our adipose tissues in our body, the fat, to burn it. So I chose the synthetic denervation on the other way, on the opposite way, to research it. So I use mice as our experiment model to denervate the sympathetic nerves on the adipose tissues, and after a few days, we will collect it to observe the cells number, observe if they gain the weight or not. And from the previous study, already found that the adipose tissue, if they get denervated, means the nerve lose the control on this adipose tissue, this fat pad can gain the weight. So we just formed the hypothesis, what happened? Do the brain tells the sympathetic nerve to get some hormone to burn the lipid? So we trace to the origin one, trace to the genes to find out if the gene regulation or gene differences causes happen. So we test the RNA, we extract RNA from the lipid and use a very fancy technology called Illumina RNA sequencing to sequence these genes, and we will label the genes using the computer to compare with the normal genes, the mice genes, and compare with each other and find out, especially find out the genes which is controlled by the brains, especially focus on some lipase which can burn the lipid, also focus on the genes which can respond for the sympathetic activity, and then we will Further, to confirm this gene indeed causes the proteins, and the proteins indeed cause this change of the lipid metabolism. So we will test the protein levels and confirm that if the gene changed or not. So that's very significant, especially we focus on the certain pathways, certain genes could be later on the potential therapy target for the obesity therapy. Thank you.
Okay, and now, finalist number 10, last but not least, is Jeffrey Brock in the Department of Physics, and his advisor is Mahmoud Khan, and he will be talking to us about new materials for energy-efficient refrigeration. Jeffrey.
The development of refrigeration technology was one of the many Prometheus moments of the last century. I mean, can you imagine how different our world would be today if we couldn't transport perishable goods long distances, or how uncomfortable your home might be in the summer without air conditioning? Refrigeration has worked its way into our modern lifestyle, and we really don't stop to think that much about it. But like everything, it comes with its costs. Today's air conditioners and refrigerators still rely on the same antiquated gas compression technology that was in use 50 years ago. And it puts an enormous strain on our power grid. 30% of our electricity goes to powering these devices. And how is that power created? Fossil fuels, contributing greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. The gases used in that cycle, they're also incredibly toxic, ozone-depleting greenhouse gases. So there's a lot of room for improvement here, and physics might provide a solution to that question. And what if I told you that the answer might be a magnet? Not an ordinary refrigerator magnet, but a highly specialized piece of magnetic material whose properties can be manipulated to yield a cooling effect under certain circumstances. See, what gives a magnet the attractive and repulsive behavior that we all know is a property known as the magnetic moment, which I represent on the slide here as these arrows. Now, under certain situations, these moments can align in the same direction, and then any heat particles or phonons present in the material can collide with the moments, reorient them in random directions, and in that collision process, the moments lose energy and the temperature decreases. And it's up to 40% more efficient than current technology. I'd also like to note that it can very easily be adapted to heat. We could reverse the cycle, and this has massive implications for cancer treatment, because if we were to inject these particles into someone's body and have them bind only to cancerous cells, we could heat and destroy those cells, leaving the healthy cells intact, avoiding the ravages of chemotherapy. But work needs to be done on these materials before we see them in production, and that's where my thesis research steps in. See, I investigate new materials to be used in these types of processes, and specifically I work with a class of compounds known as Heusler alloys, and they're remarkable for several reasons. First, they're completely non-toxic. Second, they're made out of so-called dirt elements, things that are cheap, abundant, and available probably in your own backyard. And third, we can manipulate their magnetic properties to maximize this cooling effect at certain temperatures. Now, what makes a good refrigerating magnet? Well, it's something that under certain situations, i.e. temperature, the moments will all align in the same direction. But the interaction between moments isn't strong enough to prevent those heat particles from reorienting them. And we've recently had some success in our lab investigating materials that exhibit this phenomenon at room temperature, which is a really important step forward for applications in commercial air conditioners and refrigerators. So while we're still several years away from seeing technologies like this available on the market, I think that my thesis research is helping provide real solutions to some of the real threats that are being posed by climate change and increased energy consumption. Thank you.